Pull up a chair, honey. Lean in close, because the history books won't tell you the truth about how the concrete in this city really got its color. You look at New York City today and you see glass towers, but back in 1933, the city was a beast that ate the weak for breakfast. It was the Great Depression, and hope was as thin as the soup in the bread lines. But in Harlem, we had our own way of surviving. We had the numbers. A nickel bet could turn into $50, enough to keep the lights on and the landlord away. My grandson, Lucky Luciano, he understood that better than anyone. Now, don't you go making that face. He wasn't just some hoodlum. He was the man who looked at a city on fire and decided to own the flame. This is the story of the night the world tried to break him and how he broke the world instead. It was February 14th, 1933, Valentine's Day, but there weren't no flowers blooming in the gutter. The trouble started with a man named Dutch Schultz, a German mobster from the Bronx with a heart like a rusted radiator. He'd made millions bootlegging, but with Prohibition ending, Dutch was looking for a new piggy bank. He looked south toward Harlem and saw all that nickel and dime money flowing into the lap of Madame Stephanie St. Clair. Now, Madame was a queen, and Lucky, he was her sword. He'd educated himself in the joint, reading philosophy and that man Shakespeare. He knew that in New York, power isn't just about who has the biggest gun, it's about who has the most respect. Dutch sent his goons to 133rd Street to give Madame an ultimatum: pay up or get buried. Madame just looked at those boys and told them to get out before they caught a cold they wouldn't wake up from. Lucky was standing in the corner, his eyes like two pieces of flint. One of Dutch's men sneered at him. "You want to be smart about this, boy?" Lucky didn't say a word. He just stared. It was the kind of look that makes a man wonder if he left his stove on at home. The goons left, but we knew the air was getting heavy. A storm was coming, and it smelled like gunpowder. Dutch Schultz wasn't used to being told no. He decided to make an example out of Lucky. He didn't just want him dead. He wanted a massacre that would make the Harlem streets run red. He sent 12 of his most vicious hitters, men like Tommy the Executioner and Marty Delaney, men who'd forgotten what a conscience felt like. They set a trap in a basement near Lennox Avenue. It was an after-hours spot, a place where the air was thick with illegal gin and bad intentions. Lucky got a tip that Dutch's men were going to hit Madame's counting house at dawn. He went down there alone, or that's what Dutch's boys thought. It was 4:32 a.m. when Lucky walked down those narrow wooden stairs. The only light was a single bulb swinging from the ceiling, casting long, jerky shadows against the crates of smuggled whiskey. Click, click, click. 12 guns leveled at his chest. 12 men stepped out of the dark. Tommy the Executioner stepped forward, a nasty grin on his face. "Dutch sends his regards, Lucky," Tommy said. Lucky stood there, his hands at his sides, as calm as a Sunday morning. He looked at each one by one. "Is that all he sent?" Tommy's grin slipped. "You got 5 seconds to beg." "You're making a mistake," Lucky said, his voice as smooth as silk. "The mistake is thinking I came here alone." Tommy glanced at the stairs. Silence. He looked back at Lucky and sneered. "You're bluffing." Lucky smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Then shoot. Nobody pulled a trigger, because in that moment, the rhythm changed. Lucky had been fighting since he was a boy in the South. He knew that violence is like music. If you control the tempo, you win the song. Before Tommy could blink, Lucky moved. He didn't reach for a piece. He reached for that swinging light bulb. Crack! Total darkness. The basement exploded. Dutch's man started screaming, "He's over here! Fire! Fire!" Muzzle flashes lit up the room like strobe lights, but they were shooting at shadows, shooting at each other. Lucky knew that basement like the back of his hand. He'd played poker in that room. He knew where every table leg and every loose floorboard was. He didn't waste bullets. He used the crates. He used his fists. He used their own panic against them. You'd hear a bone snap, a body hit the floor, and then a man screaming as his own partner accidentally plugged him in the leg. It lasted maybe 3 minutes. When the light finally spilled down from the door upstairs, it looked like a butcher shop. 11 men were sprawled out, some groaning, some silent, some just broken. Only one man was still conscious, Marty Delaney. He was sitting against the wall, shaking so hard his teeth were rattling. Lucky was gone. He'd vanished into the New York night like a ghost. It took Marty Delaney 20 minutes to crawl up those stairs. He hailed a cab with blood-stained fingers and headed straight for the Bronx. Dutch Schultz was sitting in his social club, eating eggs and reading the morning paper, when Marty stumbled in. Dutch looked up, his face turning the color of ash. "Where are the others?" Dutch asked. "Dead, or close to it. He let me live." Dutch stood up, his chair screeching against the floor. "He what?" "He let me live to give you this." Marty reached into his coat. Dutch's bodyguards reached for their heaters, but Marty just pulled out a single playing card, the ace of spades, smeared with a thumbprint of blood. "He said to tell you Harlem's not for sale, and if you send more men, send more cards. He's starting a collection." The room went dead silent. You could hear the clock on the wall ticking away the seconds of Dutch Schultz's empire. Dutch looked at that card for a long time. Then he did something nobody expected. He picked up his lighter, set the card on fire, and dropped it into an ashtray. "We're done in Harlem," Dutch said. "Let Lucky have it." His lieutenant started shouting, "Boss, we can't let him get away with this." But Dutch just shook his head. "You want to go to war with a man who isn't afraid to die? A man who's smarter than us and has a whole neighborhood guarding his back? That kind of war costs everything. And for what? A few nickels? There's easier money elsewhere." After that night, Dutch Schultz never set foot in Harlem again. He knew when he'd been outplayed. People say Lucky wasn't really alone that night. They say he had 4 of his best men upstairs, locking the doors from the outside, ensuring Dutch's hitters were trapped like rats in a cage. Lucky could have killed 'em all, but he knew that a dead man can't tell a story. He needed a survivor to carry the fear back to the Bronx. Lucky Luciano became the undisputed king of New York's underworld because he understood the most important rule of the street. Respect isn't something people give you out of the goodness of their hearts. It's something you take. He kept that ace of spades. He had it framed and hung it right over his desk, not because he liked the card, but because it reminded him that even when you're outnumbered 12-1, if you stay calm and control the light, you're the one who walks out of the basement. That's how it happened, sugar. The night the Bronx blinked and Harlem stood tall. Now, if you want to hear more about how Lucky Luciano gooked this city from the shadows, you better make sure you're subscribed to this channel. We're digging up the stories the statues won't tell you.